Well, have you been as inspired as I have throughout this day? What an excellent start to Upswell 2020. So, we conclude our first day as we began it, motivated, grounded, and looking forward to the future. I want to introduce our next speaker, the Reverend Samuel Rodriguez, president of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference, or otherwise known as NHCLC. It is the world's largest Hispanic Christian organization with more than 42,000 churches in the United States and many additional churches spread throughout the Spanish speaking diaspora. Now, in April of 2020, earlier this year, he was appointed to the National Coronavirus Recovery Commission to offer specialized experience and expertise in crisis mitigation and recovery to help our national, state, and local leaders guide our nation through the COVID-19 pandemic. Welcome, and over to you, Reverend Rodriguez.
Muchas gracias. Thank you for having me, everyone. Thank you. I'm honored and blessed to be with you. Hey, Upswell, Dorothy, we're not in Kansas anymore. We are living in a very unique year. The word unique is the best way that a pastor can describe this year, right? It's a unique year, an unprecedented year. We've heard that term used and overused and probably exploited. An unprecedented year indeed. One of the great revelations from this year, there is an old adage that says, the storm does not define you. The storm reveals who you really are. Well, I do believe this 2020 storm year has, in essence, served to reveal a number of underlying threads and realities. Speaking to America, speaking to our civic reality, speaking to the economic justice, educational shortcomings, primarily addressing or impacting communities of color, that we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to take advantage, and I say this with great due deference, to take advantage of this year. And as it pertains to civic infrastructure, flipping the script. We really do. And again, COVID, not just COVID, the injustices that we have seen throughout the course of America in different cities and different regions, this may be a moment. This may be a moment where we come together, we transcend political myopia, we transcend even cultural silos, and we establish coalitions and partnerships for the purpose of advancing the greater good. This may very well be that hour. Forgive me. This is that hour, not maybe. I truly believe it's that hour. Let me tell you what's guiding me in my commitment to seeing this sort of transformation, reinventing the American landscape as it pertains to what drives me as a preacher of the gospel, Psalm 89:14, a society where righteousness and justice, truth and love lead the way. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of God's throne. Truth and love lead the way as attendants. They are the de facto and de jure gatekeepers. And if we have a society built on righteousness and justice, truth and love, we are unstoppable. Every single person in America right now, be it in the urban centers, the suburbs, the rural areas, every single person right now can fall under one of three respective categories. They are either failing, surviving, or thriving. Failing, surviving, or thriving. If I were to engage a biblical metaphor, and I have no other choice, it's what I do every Sunday, it would be Egypt, the desert, or the promised land. Egypt would be failure, desert would be perpetual survival mode, and the promised land would be thriving. Our objective together as a citizenry, my objective as a leader within the faith community, is to see every single American, of course, not fail and not just merely survive. God forbid that we continue to tolerate people in communities making brick without straw. We want to see every community thriving, every God-ordained given potential embedded in every single human being, in every single family, in every single community thriving. We want every American community to thrive. How do we do that? Yes, it requires us to come together, establish coalitions, collaborative relationships that transcend political myopic affiliations or worldviews. But it begins with the following. Let me give you a list. The Lamb's Agenda. I wrote a book some years back about this obsession in America, this uber political, partisan sort of division and strife and discord that permeates all of American society and culture. 2020 is no exception. We would even argue that 2020 is political strife on steroids. But I wrote a book and I said, we should not be obsessed with the agenda of the donkey or the elephant. As a Christian now, let me speak from my faith womb. As a Christian, I'm encouraging all believers, all followers of Christ from all denominational streams to elevate the agenda of the Lamb. We shouldn't be married to the agenda of the donkey or the elephant. We should be married exclusively to the agenda of the Lamb. If we are to fix these problems, we can't live in the silo of a political myopic worldview. We can't even live in an echo chamber of constant mutual affirmation where all we do is gather around the same tribe of people that believe like us. We need to surround with people that don't think like us or have a differing opinion. And as long as we recognize and realize that we are all created in the image of God, and because we all carry the imago Dei, even if I disagree with you, I'm not just going to respect you. As a child of God, by the way, I'm just not going to tolerate you. I'm going to love you. I know it sounds wishy-washy. I'm from California. I'm a Christian hippie. So yes, I'm going to love you. So we're called to respect and love, even when we disagree over politics, over even controversial critical issues. That's the first thing, the Lamb's agenda. The second item is embracing the cross as a metaphor. Of course, it's much more than a metaphor. But as a metaphor, the cross is both vertical and horizontal. It's both vertical and horizontal. And for too long, America has been divided between vertical individuals and horizontal individuals. How about this? Even the Christian church, the vertical Christians and horizontal Christians. In essence, the followers of Billy Graham and the followers of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When I was 14 years of age, I saw a Dr. King special, which was, this is, way past, I'm not that old, so I wasn't around for that time. But I saw a special on PBS with Dr. King. And it was the March on Washington, 1963, the I Have a Dream speech. Later on, in that immediate span of time, I saw on Channel 39 in the Lehigh Valley, where I'm originally from, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, I saw a Billy Graham crusade. Now, I'm going to tell you what this 14-year-old Puerto Rican American had my moment, my encounter, which I do believe was God-inspired. I had this moment where my life's mission was to reconcile Billy Graham's message with Dr. King's march. At the age of 14, it just hit me. Why can't we be both? Why can't we both be both Billy Graham and Dr. King? Why can't we be both vertical and horizontal? Righteousness and justice, sanctification and service, holiness and humility, covenant and compassion, orthodoxy and orthopraxy, John 3:16 and Matthew 25, the ethos and the pathos. Why can't we both be truth and love? Why can't we reconcile the vertical and the horizontal? The strongest part of the cross, by the way, is the nexus, is the point of convergence where the vertical and the horizontal intersect. That's upswell. That right there is the tipping point. That's how we change America, where we intersect righteousness with justice, where we intersect Billy Graham's message with Dr. King's march, the fishes and the bread. That right there is how we change America and change the world. The nexus of the cross, conviction and compassion, that's where we come together. So we must, advancing the Lamb's agenda from the nexus of the cross, point 3, work with the following rubric. Today's complacency is tomorrow's captivity. Permit me to reiterate. Today's complacency is tomorrow's captivity. We are what we tolerate. And we've tolerated things that we have the wherewithal, the cognitive bandwidth, the spiritual fortitude to overcome. As a society, as a nation, we've tolerated things, not just now, but for generations, that we have this is the 21st century, for crying out loud. We have the technological wherewithal, the acumen to do great things, but not just that. It seems that we're technologically advancing, but morally there are questions because we permit things in our society that we should never permit. You would have thought that right now, as Americans, we would have completely eradicated all vestiges of poverty or educational inequality or justice inequality. And yet here we are again. So again, today's complacency is tomorrow's captivity. We are what we tolerate. Number three, there is no such thing, my constituency now, as comfortable Christianity. Number four, truth must never be sacrificed on the altar of political or cultural expediency. And for all the Christ followers out there, people of faith, while we're waiting for Jesus to come down, Jesus is waiting for his church to stand up. We are called by God. We are called to Matthew 25, to Luke chapter 4. I referenced Psalm 89:14, Micah 6:8, do justice, love mercy, walk humbly before God. That's our clarion call. So here we are. Here we are in 2020 in a very unique, unprecedented year. COVID and the social unrest speaks to the lack of a continual meta-narrative that speaks to not an utopia, but that speaks to the full application of our potential. There are systemic elements still embedded in our society that must be addressed. It begins with that confession, that full acknowledgement. There are systemic lids. There are systemic elements of racism. Yes, there are within the system. And I'll give you examples. There's educational inequality. I know for a fact that in major urban centers of America, brown and black kids, black and Latino kids do not receive the same educational opportunities as children that live in the suburb. Matter of fact, without a doubt, we have to remove that lid. There is a systemic lid on our justice system. Recently, there has been an attempt, a bipartisan attempt to address that as it pertains to the penal component, the punitive element, how brown and black kids were punished disproportionately with sentencing realities in comparison to non-brown and African-American young men and women. And by the grace of God, we're beginning to address that. At least we're there. It's the beginning of a conversation. But there are other systemic elements. We're privy to some of those that are taking place across the country, and we're calling for reforming, even for the reformation of law enforcement, and to address the lack of trust primarily between the African-American community and law enforcement. This is where we can come in as that independent voice. It doesn't mean that you align yourself in the voting booth with a political affiliation because it better reflects your values. Well, praise God and pass the ammunition, go get them. But as it pertains to prophetic activism, as it pertains to providing viable solutions, we must come together and transcend what I call political myopia. I hope and pray that our political affiliation does not cancel out our prophetic assignment. And I do believe our prophetic assignment trumps any and all political nomenclatures, descriptors, and affiliations. So here we are. We find ourselves with an unprecedented opportunity to change things. And permit me to give you some practical solutions, if we may. As it pertains to educational equality, we must expand opportunity for Native Americans, for Latinos, for African Americans as expeditiously as possible, providing more opportunity. Now, this may be a little bit controversial for some. This is coming from a former high school teacher that taught high school for 5 years. I do believe in expanded opportunity. I do believe in the marketplace of ideas. I do believe that the greater the opportunity, in order for us to equip young men and women, some of the best schools, initiatives are emerging right now in urban centers across America, from New York City to Los Angeles to Sacramento, my hometown now, to Miami, Dallas. There are examples of brilliant initiatives specifically targeting young men and women of color for the purpose of removing the educational lid. And what we're seeing is with these new initiatives, with these new charters, with these new engagement platforms, we are seeing young men and women not just survive, but thrive. We started the Faith and Education Coalition at the NHCLC to address the disparity primarily in the Latino community. And what we discovered was just totally outrageous. We discovered that certain kids, I'll give you an example, in Los Angeles, in the 10th grade, they were basically, in essence, and not basically in essence, we had an example that actually happened, reading Dora the Explorer stuff when white kids in the suburbs were reading Chaucer and Shakespeare and Milton. So, I mean, you have to be kidding me. We have to remove the lid. And we have to do that as expeditiously as possible. Educational equality. Second component right now is, be it you want to call it empowerment zones, opportunity zones, we have to provide entrepreneurship, free enterprise, and access to capital for communities of color in order for us to rebuild our infrastructure in America. By the way, that speaks to a systemic reality, a lid in the banking institutions in America, in the lending institutions, even though it's been addressed legislatively. There is still great study that if an African-American or Latino goes for a small business loan, we are disproportionately rejected and refused in comparison to non-African-American or Latino. Just the reality. You can't deny the science. So I'm not doing politics. I'm just doing simple math. You can't deny the science. So we have to address access to capital. And again, recently there has been great bipartisan conversations on how do we remove the lid from access to capital that will enable African-American, Latino, Native American entrepreneurs to engage that free enterprise opportunity. So it's education, it's free enterprise, removing the economic lid, and we addressed the justice component a few minutes ago. That justice component must be constant. We must be intentional about it. We must be vigilant to make sure that we are advancing a justice reality that does not discriminate, not even for one moment, one iota, and that we do away with every single vestige of racism embedded within the system. And we do it in a way that is bipartisan, independent of aligning ourselves exclusively with one political affiliation, but saying this is not about donkey or elephant, it's about advancing the Lamb's agenda. All of this is feasible. All of this is doable. It's not even a pipe dream. We can do this. It requires all of us coming together in a spirit of righteousness and justice, truth and love, reconciling Billy Graham's message with Dr. King's march, advancing the Lamb's agenda, understanding that what we do will impact our children and our children's children. I hope and pray that my children and my grandchildren, watch this, will one day walk on top of the ruins of what I bring down in my generation by the grace of God. I want them to thrive. I don't want them to fail. And I used to want them in perpetual survival mode. I want them to live out their God-given potential to the max and become a blessing to everyone they know and change America and change the world. I am honored to be with you. Grateful indeed. Thank you so very much for having me. Muchas bendiciones. Abrazos.
Mute. Thank you so much for that message. I have the amazing challenge of trying to figure out a couple of key points from your message today. And I was trying to, for me, it's easiest if I get a phrase in my head and then I can take that phrase and it all comes back. I noted two of them, which I think if I can continue to repeat them, I can remember your message. We are what we tolerate, and removing the lid. For me, if I can say those two phrases over and over again, I can pull out of my reserve. So thank you so much for that message today. And we've heard so many messages throughout the day, and it's so it's almost overwhelming to try to figure out what those phrases are. I mean, when you look back over what we've heard on the main stage today, beginning with Isabel Wilkerson, just taking a look at the message that she brought. And one of the things she said was, our era is calling on us to get to know our history. That's how we truly heal. So often we forget our history, or we don't know our history. And if we don't know it, you know what they say, we're destined to repeat it. Or then we heard the words of Ibram X. Kendi. This nation is dying and we need to do the hard work of healing. We need to go through the pain of healing. Some of us want this nation to heal without the pain, and I don't think that's possible. Those are his words. We don't want to do it without the pain. And then we've heard about our families. We must invest in our families. So often we go along to get along rather than step forward to lead. We've heard a lot about leadership today. I think we're kind of, I don't know about you, but we're kind of at that place in the day where we have to now reflect on all of the things that we've heard and think about how we can use these messages in our personal lives, in our community lives, in our organizational lives. So I think it made sense that we started the day, many started the day off, refreshing our bodies. Those of you who were up early this morning with Felicia and took advantage of the yoga, I am impressed that you were up at the crack of dawn. Well, actually, 10 o'clock's not really the crack of dawn, but it was early. It was early enough. And there will be there will be other opportunities throughout the next 2 days if you want to take advantage of the early yoga. And even though we're going to be signing off in just a few minutes for today, I just want to mention we'll be signing off at 5 o'clock, but coming back at 6 o'clock, there will be an opportunity. I don't know if you're like me, but we've been sitting a lot today, and there will be an opportunity to get up and move. At 6 o'clock, there will be a West African dance class right here, and you will be able to participate, dance as much as you feel comfortable. The amazing part about doing this on Zoom is you're doing it in the privacy of your own space. So you can look silly, you can look amazing, you can do whatever it is you want to do, but it just gives you a chance to get up and move. We've been using our minds a lot today. We've been using our hearts a lot today, and this is a chance to just kind of use your body a lot today. So certainly feel free to get up, take advantage of that. And that's about it. This is pretty much the end of day one of Upswell. We have a full agenda tomorrow. Again, many of you have registered for the smaller yoga opportunity tomorrow, and then we'll get started again. So I hope you've gotten as much out of day one as I have, and then we do it again tomorrow. Upswell 2020 is in full swing. If you know some folks who didn't participate with us today, they still have an opportunity. They can still register, and we'll do it all again tomorrow. We'll see you then. Have a great evening.